Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Picket Studios. Today we are going to be using this new set. This is Hollyhocks in Bloom. This is my latest illustration for Picket Studios, and we're going to be doing some watercolor today. I'm also going to be using a couple of this. This is from Beyond Basics. They have like a whole collection of these that are different shapes and things like that that work together. This one is arches and kind of like some window frames. So we're going to be using those to kind of create, I guess it's like an interactive element, but it's just like a fun little added something. So first things first, in order to make this watercolor as easy as possible for us, we are going to do an emboss resist. So I am treating my watercolor paper with my anti-static tool. I am then inking up my stamp with some white pigment ink because I'm going to be heat embossing in white. If you wanted it to be clear so you would just see the color of the paper, you would use like a Versamark. But I think that I get the best white embossing when I use a white pigment ink first. And then I will be sprinkling on some white detail embossing powder. This is like a finer embossing powder so that it shows all those little details. And so once I sprinkle that, get rid of the excess, I'm going to heat set that. I do always preheat my heating, like my heat gun, just so that way it minimizes the warping of the paper. So once I have that all good, I am going to go back in and stamp this a few more times. I knew that I wanted to have kind of like this bunch, because I mean, who just plants one hollyhock, right? Like they're all together. So I wanted to have like this bunch that were kind of like blooming up into this window. So I don't need the full stamp every time. We're going to have a couple of different heights of these hollyhocks to add interest. So I stamped the full thing only once, and then these next two are just going to be like halves. But then we're going to do the same embossing technique that we did with the first one so that they are all the same. And then once we have those ready to go, we will move on to the watercoloring. You can use whatever watercolor medium you prefer. Today, I am going to be using my Altenew tube watercolors. I previously did a video when I put them into pans, and now outside of my Daniel Smiths, these are kind of like my go-tos. I really do like them, and I have the little swatch card for them so I know what all my colors are going to look like. And we're going to keep this pretty simple with mostly just like two colors. So I'm going to use my spray bottle to spray those down so that I can start picking up the pigment. And we're going to talk a little bit about color mixing as well as loose versus controlled watercolor. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's hard for me because I do, like most of us, I do like to have control over the way that it's going to work. However, watercolor is tricky because sometimes the more you try to control it, the less pretty it is. So here, this is the first one I'm doing. I've put down water, and because we have that embossing, it's kind of going to act as like a dam for our water. And so we can put the water down and then add in the pigment. But you can see here, I'm just continually, I can't leave it alone. I'm just continually going in and I am manipulating the water, manipulating the pigment. And you're going to see that there is a huge difference between the two. Like when you just lay it down and then kind of let go of that control versus laying it down and doing what I'm doing here, which is continually going back in and messing around with it because I just can't help myself. So if you find that you are a person who's doing what I am doing right now, then I would challenge you to try to do it the other way, which we will see here shortly. But this this particular one, the more control that you have is with the less water, the less control you have is with more water. Here we're doing a little bit of color mixing, and this is because I wanted to create some darker shades of the same color. So on the color wheel, you want to mix the complementary colors, and to get like just a little bit darker of a shade, you would do like 80 of the magenta and 20 of the olive green. I chose olive, so it would be more desaturated, but the yellow green is complementary colors to pink on the color wheel. So if you do like an 80-20 mixture with the magenta being the 80, it's just going to be slightly darker. You can do a 50-50, which is definitely going to be more on the brown side. But I am going to mix up 3 different colors. And then each one I will be increasing the amount of olive that I add. And they're all going to be pink. I know that on the screen this particular one does not look like it's still pink, but it is. And then I'll have this one here, which is more of the 80-20. And then I'll do one that's just the pure magenta. And then these are going to be how I add my shading going forward. You can see each one gets a little bit darker. And when we're doing like kind of like the looser look, I'm not saying that you can't add darker shades. I'm saying that you have to walk away from trying to manipulate where all the color is going to go. So this particular flower here is kind of canted to the left. So we see a little bit of the petals that are coming up over, which would cast a shadow onto the main body of the petals. So that's going to be where I'm adding the majority of my pigment. I'm also going to be adding some pigment kind of to the left of the center because, like I said, it's turned kind of to the left and a little bit away from us. So you'll see as I practice each petal that I'm getting better and better about not over manipulating. This one I still am, not as much as the first one, but I still am kind of messing around with it quite a bit. And I'm just going to work my way up this hollyhock. And as I go, you'll see I get more comfortable with being looser. Now, none of these are right or wrong. It really just depends on like the style that you are interested in or the end result that you're interested in, and how to get there. So maybe one of these in the middle will be what you prefer. I love the look of the ones that are less controlled, like I'm much looser with, but those are the hardest ones for me to achieve. And the only way I'm able to do that is just by continually practicing letting that go. So this flower is kind of turned to the right. So the portion that is kind of coming up over itself, again, will cast the shadow onto the main body of the petals. So that is where I am adding my shadows. And you can see even just with these two, as I get more comfortable with being looser, with like manipulating the pigment, how different they look from that first one where I was really, really trying to control the way that it worked. These, next couple of ones are definitely going to be more looser. Now, more loose. I will say that the first one is the one that I was able to get like the darkest shading on it. Like, hollyhocks they're not tubes, but they do have like a sunk in center. And so that part would be darker. And as I'm going through and kind of just dropping the pigment and letting it do its thing, the reason that the other ones do not have such a dark center is because you're supposed to do them in layers. So you're supposed to do them in layers to build up that color. And which each of these flowers, I only did 1 layer, which is why the most controlled has the darkest section. And that's because I use the least amount of water. So that like the pigment really had a chance to kind of just sit exactly where I put it, hence why it is more controlled. But that doesn't mean that you can't add in other layers or continually add in more pigment, while it is still wet to get deeper, darker colors. I just did not do that because that is not it's not an easy way to achieve the look, and I really wanted to keep it kind of as user-friendly as possible, because we're all at kind of different levels. But if you're looking for like really specific instruction on watercolor, I would highly recommend that you check out Dawn Woleslagle. Her YouTube channel is W+9, but she does lives as well on her Facebook group, which is also W+9. And she has been going over the like different beginner watercolor things, and I would highly recommend that you check that out. Dawn also does videos on the Picket Fence channel. She's super talented, but really, I mean, watercolor is her medium, and she knows much more about it than I do. So we're going to go through this. This is the last flower. I am going to do the other ones off camera, but I will, you will be able to see like the leaves and all of those things as we move through. So for a little bit of story time, I did want to talk about like friends we didn't know we needed. And in order for me to talk about friends we didn't know we needed, we have to talk about somebody who is part of the Picket Fence Studios team, and that is Jennifer Cray. Now, she is a designer for Picket Fence as well, so if you're on Instagram or the blog, like you'll see her designs, and she's super talented, but behind the scenes she also does a ton more. Let's talk about the color mixing real quick. So here I'm sticking with the olive green, but then I'm also mixing it with a little bit of that phthalo green, so I have a brighter combination that is more of a true green. And then later I'm also going to mix it with a little bit of permanent deep yellow to get more of a yellow green. But other than that, like mixing those three colors, I'm pretty much doing the same thing, and you'll watch as I kind of struggle through over manipulating it the same way that I did with the flowers as we, kind of move our way up this hollyhock stock. So anyway, Jennifer is a part of the Picket Fence team. She wears a lot of hats. But how I met her was actually when Picket Fence first approached me about working with them. Now, I had already used their products myself, but I wasn't doing any like specific design work for them or any illustrations or anything like that. That kind of all came later. And my first point of contact was Jennifer. And she did things very differently. Like other companies, that reached out, kind of sent out an email, or maybe we would kind of chit chat on Instagram chats or Facebook Messenger. Jen actually requested a call with me, so that we could see each other face to face, which was different. And like right away, I really liked her. I liked how straightforward she was, and kind of no nonsense, because that's very similar to how I am. And so it was a very productive conversation, obviously, which led to me working more closely with Picket Fence, and then later, starting to do some illustrations for them. But and I get to meet her face to face. I think I told you guys before, when we what was it? A Creativation last year, not this year. They had Creativation in Columbus, and I live in Ohio. So I was able to go down there, and Jen had come over from the UK, and Nicole, and there was another design team member there. And I got to meet the wonderful family that, Nicole and Matt, who run the business, and their Matt's parents. They were all really, really lovely. But I did get to meet Jen in person, which I think just kind of solidified our friendship versus a business relationship. And now, like, she is one of my closest friends. And it's so funny to me how like God works, because I think most of us don't even realize that we're missing that kind of friend connection and he just brings people into our lives in such, different kind of ways. And like I said, I had been using, Picket Fence's products for years. So it's not like, this was like a quick turnaround, that God provided. But then when Jen came on the team, and allowed us to have that connection, then from there, like just learning about her and the type of person that she is. Here's all of the flowers painted. And so we will be die cutting these out. I'm also, like I said, using those arches. I did want to paint just like a really loose kind of sky to go behind my flowers, which is so funny. Like here, I'm tracing it to make sure that I have, like, I'm going to cover it all. And you may notice that there is a crimp in this paper, and I am so cheap. You guys know this. I am so cheap. I was like, I'm not throwing this paper away. I'm just going to use it as a background where I know that section will be covered up. And sure enough, today is the day. So I'm going to use a combination of the hold on. It's the dark cyan and the what is that? I couldn't remember it in the other video either. I just did a Picket Fence video the other day and I couldn't remember the name of it. I'll link it below. So anywho, speaking of, there's a sale. We're like 16 minutes into this video and I completely forgot to mention that. Picket Fence is doing spring savings, and there's a new sale every 3 days. And currently the sale is on stamps and their coordinating dies, which also includes all of my stamps except for the ones that just came out with the most recent release. But if you have had your eye on any of my stamps, they are all on sale. They're 50% off with the coordinating dies. So you can pick a stamp set up for like $10. Some of the dies are $10 or stamps are $8. Like, it's really, really good sales. And if you've ever, kind of been like, oh, I really want one of your illustrations, but I'm saving up my pennies, now's the time because they're literally all on sale. Here, I just wanted to show you, sometimes I kind of get stuck in a rut with my watercolor where I feel like I'm creating a pattern even though I don't want to. And sometimes what I do to break that up is to do like the little spatters into the background, so that it kind of is more random where the paint ends up, and then I'll blend that out. Another thing you can do is what I'm doing here, which is just going in with a dry paper towel and blotting up some of the color a little bit more randomly so there isn't that stark pattern that's created. And then once those are completely dry, you want both of them to be completely dry, then you can do your die cutting. Here I chose one of the arches and I'm going to cut this out of navy cardstock. This one is too big, so we're going to have to come back and do it. We're also going to cut the windows out of white, and a little like backup arch. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So anyway, the sale, there's new sales every 3 days. Though this sale, I think, is good through, I think it's good through tomorrow, the 23rd, but I'm not 100% positive. I will try to remember to list that below. But anyway, so like Jen is, I'm so grateful for her friendship. Like, she really is one of those people who is like loving and supportive, but she's also going to tell me like it is if I need to hear that. And she's so honest. Like, really, she inspires me to just be a better person. And we don't always agree on everything. Sometimes we have different viewpoints about things that are going on in the world, or, but the core things, like, we agree on so much. And I just adore her. She's just so kind. Okay, let's talk about the card. So here, in order to make these little shutters, I am actually scoring the side. If you don't have the spellbinders, or another score tool that has like the scoring built in, the gray one is the cutter, the cream one is the scorer. You could also just use a bone folder with a score pal or with your regular paper cutter. And then once I have those scored, I am going to fold them back because I want the shutters to open up. And then I'm just going to reaffirm that fold with my bone folder. So, yeah, Jennifer just makes me want to be a better person. Like, she's so kind and resilient, and the way that she just takes on life challenges, and like I can't go into it all because it's her personal business, but between the things that life has thrown at her, between her, like, the grief that she's experienced and her own health issues, and how she still just like shows up to be nothing but loving and supportive of other people. She's amazing. She's so amazing. So if you don't follow her, I would highly recommend it on Instagram. She does not have a YouTube channel, but she does have a Instagram and a blog. But also, like, if you have a friend who is loving and supportive and you're just kind of like in awe of, like, don't be shy about telling them, because it's important. We all, I mean, whether it's from a stranger or from a close friend, like, if it is a compliment, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, because you're only going to improve somebody else's day. So that's just my 2 cents about that. And so here, this is the piece that I cut the smaller rectangle out of. Or rectangle, Lord have mercy, the arch. And I got kind of overzealous. I was like, what are you doing? You have to put your flowers down first. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to put my flowers down. And like I said earlier, these are all at kind of different lengths. So I put the full one down to be the tallest, and then I'm going to put the next one kind of off to the right, and then the shortest one will go in the bottom left, and then we'll end up with this really full window of hollyhocks. Like, you absolutely could mix up the colors, things like that, to make it more interesting. I stuck with all like the pinkish magenta color, but I do think like a whole garden of different colors would be really beautiful. And now the white piece that I originally cut the shutters out of, and then I just trimmed out that middle section. I'm going to put this in place because it is the perfect width for my shutters, since that's where I cut them out of. Now, I will note that my shutters don't completely touch, but that's okay, because honestly, they're never going to be laying flat, except for in my photo. They're never going to be laying flat. They're always going to be kind of bouncing open, which is kind of what makes the interactive portion, that you could open them up and really read the sentiment. Or you could leave it like that. You could leave the shutters off and just, put the dark blue, the navy, over the slightly smaller arch, and it would give you that really nice white border, and you could just leave it like this and put your sentiment. I just thought the little shutters were just a little added cute little extra thing to do. And you can obviously do this with a bunch of things. Like, you could do like birds on a branch outside the window, or a birdhouse, or trees, like whatever you wanted. I just did the up close of the hollyhocks. But when you are adding the shutters, you want to make sure that you're only adding glue to the frame portion. You're not adding glue to the outside of the shutters, unless your intention is to glue them down flat, which mine obviously was not. So I'm going to fit that back in, and it's going to fit perfectly right into there because it's the same size arch. That's the same piece that we cut it out of. And then I'll just push that firmly into place. And then you can see how it, kind of opens and closes. Here, I did get a little bit of adhesive onto the navy. I'm just going to use an adhesive eraser. You want to make sure you use the adhesive eraser after it is dry. If you do it while it's wet, you risk ripping the paper. So then from there, I am also going to do my sentiment in white heat embossing. And I chose, I think this is, I'm going to have to double check because I'm not 100% sure. I think this is from Concord 9th. But anyway, the pink matched really well. And so I did the same thing that we did with the flowers. I hit it with my anti-static tool, use that white pigment ink, and then the white detail embossing powder. This whole set is about friendship, and so this one says, I'm so lucky to have you in my life, because I am genuinely so blessed to have such good friends, including Jennifer, and I just love her. She's just so, I'm just so blessed to know her. So anyway, popped those up, and then I am going to use, these are the new gems. It's Wonderland something, but these blue ones also can be found in the Speed of Light. So these light blue ones match the sky, and obviously we're using the navy in the background, so I thought that they would be good to accent my sentiment. I also used some clear glitter here. Be careful it doesn't reactivate your watercolor. And then this is it. This is the final card with a little bit of sparkle and lots of really easy watercolor. So I hope this helped you kind of find your watercolor style. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out that sale, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.